All right, here as the fresh round of talks that just began between Russia and Ukraine seem to have made some headway. Here is the latest information even as we get. Ukraine now confirming that Russia has agreed on 10 new humanitarian corridors. This is the agreement between both the countries, even as we know that there are millions of people still stranded in several of those combat zones who are currently taking shelter in many of those bunkers. Residential areas, of course, not safe anymore, as Ukraine claims that targets have been extensively residential buildings in many of those areas. Now, here you have finally some headway in the talks between the two countries, as Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister claiming that both the countries have agreed upon 10 humanitarian corridors. Let me quickly cut across to Maria, who's been bringing us the latest from on ground. She's right now in the capital city of Kyiv. Maria, give us a confirmation. Your Deputy Prime Minister has said that 10 humanitarian corridors have been agreed upon in the fresh round of talks today between the two countries. Where are these humanitarian corridors going to be laid out? Give us some insight into that.
Yeah, right. So the Deputy Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk, who is the Minister of Occupied Territories, has just announced the evacuation corridors, green corridors, so to say, in different areas. Mostly these areas are the eastern part of Ukraine. So we are speaking Zaporizhzhia Oblast, we are speaking Mariupol, and the assigned roads were announced. So the residential places, so the towns through which these corridors are lying, were announced by Irina Vereshchuk right now. So this is a breakthrough in these peace talks between Russia and Ukraine, because as we know, as far as yesterday, these talks were not resulting in anything, in any new information. And people in Mariupol, in Zaporizhzhia Oblast, including Berdyansk, including also Melitopol, were waiting for the possibility to go out, to flee their cities. The situation in Mariupol is catastrophic. It is humanitarian catastrophe, really. There people are spending their days already without water, without food, without connection, sitting in their bunkers, in their basements, because half of the city was heavily bombed by Russians. And this city is now already compared to Aleppo in Syria because of these deadly strikes and massive destruction. The aftermath of shelling is really terrible. And so far, not so much information is coming from this city. So these evacuation corridors, these humanitarian corridors, are something which people have been waiting for so long. And yesterday we have seen the humanitarian convoy of Ukraine standing and waiting for the entrance, for the opening of this evacuation corridor just kilometers away from Mariupol. And hopefully today these corridors will actually work, and people who are ready to evacuate, who are suffering, who have been suffering for days.
Right. These humanitarian corridors will really give that window for civilians and many of those who are stranded there to head towards a safe zone. But Maria, while you're at it, here we hear Antonov aviation industry plant in Kyiv is now on fire after heavy shelling. Give us some clarity on what you see there on ground in Kyiv. This aviation industry plant, a very historic one, the Antonov aviation industry plant in Kyiv, now under fire, that's now being gutted after Russian shelling. What do you see there?
You're right. So the picture, we see the footage that has surfaced online, shows a big cloud of smoke coming out of the area where Antonov factory is located. So it is the right bank of Kyiv, and the premises of this Antonov factory are located. We see the fire clearly happening there on the territory of the factory. So far, no official information about casualties there, only about casualties during the Obolon residential building strike this morning at 5 o'clock. And Antonov strike is kind of the second one, the second major incident here today in Kyiv. We haven't heard yet the reports about casualties or people who died in this strike on Antonov factory. But I have to say that this object is of military use, of course, because Antonov factory is a place where such planes as Mriya, which was famous as the biggest cargo aircraft in the world, this factory was a place where Antonov built actually these large planes, which were used also for military use. And right now we have to get the clarification, the new information from the officials about casualties there. But so far, the morning strike in Kyiv has already brought casualties. 2 people died in Obolon, and also at least 7 of them, of people who lived there were injured. 3 of them very heavily and now at the hospital. With new information coming to you back later.
Maria, thank you very much for joining us. We see the visuals coming in from the Antonov plant, completely gutted, that's been caught on fire. And these are sites that you see extensively from this war-torn country, centuries-old buildings and properties that have now been completely reduced to rubble. This war has entered day 19, and finally we see some kind of progress and headway between talks between the 2 countries. We're looking at an agreement to 10 humanitarian corridors that will allow for citizens to evacuate safely, for them to head towards the safe zone for today. These 10 humanitarian corridors will be opened up today for safe evacuation.